Welcome to episode 35 of the 3am Fear podcast. In 1994, a young mother, aged 31, found herself rushed to a California emergency room. She was in distress, with a racing heart, low blood pressure, and struggling breath. The doctors and nurses, accustomed to such emergencies, immediately sprang into action. However, one doctor noticed something odd. But before being able to share this with the team, a sudden loud thud shook the trauma room. More thuds followed, accompanied by screams leading to the evacuation of the entire hospital. Her mysterious condition would leave 23 people injured, 5 hospitalized, and herself dead, with no solid explanation at that point. She would later be known as the Toxic Lady or Toxic Woman. This is her story. Hello and welcome to the 3am Fear podcast. I'm Nikita Ferrao, mystery and thriller author. On this podcast, I talk about real crimes and real people. Due to the graphic nature of some of this content, listener discretion is advised. You can find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. Let's get started. On February 19th, 1994, in Southern California, a man dialed 911 in desperation as his girlfriend struggled to breathe. Despite his distress, he wasn't entirely surprised. The woman in question, Gloria Ramirez, 31 years old, had received a terminal cervical cancer diagnosis just 6 weeks earlier. Her time was running out, and her earlier hospital visit with the signs of cancer had gone unnoticed. She had missed a chance for salvation. Gloria was faced with a grim reality. She had been diagnosed with late-stage cervical cancer. She was determined to fight for her life. She clung to the thought of her 2 beloved children, a 9-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl who meant the world to her. Gloria poured her heart and soul into being a devoted mother. She played with her kids, helped them with their homework, and even lightened their days with jokes and laughter. Her positivity was infectious. She radiated joy and often hummed religious hymns as she went about her day. Despite her diagnosis, Gloria's spirit remained unbroken. She saw the impending radiation treatment as a chance to fight this battle. As the days ticked by towards the end of February, when her treatment was scheduled to begin, Gloria threw herself into researching her condition. She tried to look for any means to help improve her health and reduce the pain that she was suffering. She wanted to fight and win and live for her children. On the evening of February 19th, Gloria confided in her boyfriend that she was having a difficult time breathing. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, her boyfriend swiftly dialed 911. He knew how weak Gloria's health was, and he didn't want to take another chance. Around 8 p.m., an ambulance pulled up at Gloria's residence. Paramedics leapt into action, rushing to her side. They carefully placed her on a stretcher, securing an oxygen mask to her face. With utmost care, they transported her into an ambulance, setting the wheels in motion for what would become a night of mystery and tragedy. Within seconds, the ambulance was hurling down the road, its sirens wailing in urgency. Its destination, Riverside Hospital, situated about an hour east of Los Angeles. On board, a paramedic placed a call to the hospital's emergency room, seeking to brief doctor on duty. A 33-year-old, Dr. Julie Gorchinsky, answered the call. The paramedics narrated the critical situation. A patient with terminal cancer was struggling to breathe. Her heart rate was unstable. The looming danger prompted the paramedics to promise an arrival in 5 minutes. Julie quickly set her preparations into motion. Trauma Room 1. the designated room where Gloria was going to be treated. Julie and her team were used to this high-pressure situation, and there was nothing different about tonight. They awaited the ambulance's arrival, sure that they could help Gloria. In their eyes, tonight would be no different from any other night, a routine encounter with a gravely ill patient. They had no idea what was in store for them. The ambulance took about 15 minutes to arrive. At 8:15 p.m., the paramedics emerged from the vehicle and carefully extracted Gloria from the stretcher. They pushed through the hospital's door, navigating the corridors and only stopping when inside the emergency room. As Gloria was taken inside, the doctors and nurses immediately noticed the seriousness of her condition. Her heart rate was alarmingly high and her blood pressure was through the roof. Without hesitation, Julie and her team sprang into action, adjusting Gloria's oxygen mask to a more powerful variant than the one that was used in the ambulance. Painkillers, sedatives, and medications to stabilize her heartbeat were quickly administered, and for a brief moment, Gloria's erratic heartbeat began to steady. But this didn't last long. Soon, her heartbeat once again spiraled, and the alarm started to blare from the monitor. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Julie and her team decided to administer electric shocks to Gloria's chest using specialized paddles. The shocks could potentially reset her heart's rhythm. As the team prepared for this, they couldn't help but notice two strange things about her. First, she had a garlicky smell that came from her mouth. And second, her skin appeared very greasy, like she had just applied something. Despite this, the team didn't go to check. Most people who are rushed into the emergency room don't exactly have the time to get ready. So they assumed that the same was with Gloria. Maybe she didn't get the chance to get ready, freshen herself, apply some makeup and come in. Maybe she didn't even get a chance to brush her teeth. I mean, she was lying there in critical condition. With the electric paddles ready for action, the team placed them on Gloria's chest, initiating powerful surges of electricity to get her heart to start pumping. While the doctors were attempting to help Gloria, her blood had to be drawn. A nurse sanitized the spot on her arm and inserted a syringe. In an instant, the room was engulfed in a new scent, a chemical tang that Julie, the attending doctor, was quick to notice. Observing a stunned expression on the nurse's face, Julie said that it smelled like ammonia. The nurse continued to draw blood, but as she was done, she handed over the vial to Julie. But while she was doing that, she didn't notice that Gloria's blood wasn't red. It now had some white crystals on it. As soon as she did, a strange change came in her expression. She seemed confused and her gaze fixed as if lost. Julie was quick to notice this. As soon as she accepted the vial of blood, she couldn't help but notice that something was not right in the room. Julie's focus suddenly shifted when the nurse collapsed. Immediate action from another doctor prevented her from hitting the ground. Rushing to her aid, the collapsed nurse was quickly transported out of Trauma Room 1, allowing the remaining medical team to redirect their efforts into saving Gloria, who was slowly slipping away. During all this chaos, Julie was still clutching onto that vial of blood and was now battling waves of nausea and dizziness. She realized that her condition could be a problem, and so she carefully placed that vial on a nearby tray before slipping out of the room. As she got out, she settled into a nearby chair. Her discomfort escalated. Eventually, she too collapsed on the floor. Simultaneously, within Trauma Room 1, chaos unfolded. One after the other, nurses started collapsing without any warning. Panic gripped those who were standing, helpless, hoping that what was happening to the others wouldn't happen to them. As more and more staff started to collapse, the hospital's intercom sounded an urgent call, asking everyone to be evacuated. People started running towards the exit, hoping they could get out before they could catch whatever was making everyone fall. Only a small group of medical staff stayed back to save Gloria, who was still in need of desperate help. The idea of moving her was dangerous. Her life hung in the balance. Outside, the hospital's parking lot had changed into a scene of organized chaos. Stretchers with sick patients were quickly assembled. The air was filled with silence and cries of public. Among the chaos, the medical staff tried to gather as many supplies as they could, trying to create a plan of what to do next. Inside Trauma Room 1, the medical team's efforts to stabilize Gloria wasn't going well. Despite the administration of drugs, chest shocks, and oxygen, Gloria's vital signs continued to weaken. Her blood pressure plummeted and her heartbeat grew weaker with each passing moment. Tragically, at around 8:50 p.m., approximately 35 minutes after she was brought into this emergency room, she passed away. Afraid that whatever was happening was connected to Gloria, a couple of workers moved her to a quarantine room just to be safe. Soon after she was moved, a woman named Sally began vomiting and said like it felt like her skin was burning. Gloria's body was placed in a sealed aluminium casket. The tragedy also extended to the hospital staff attending to Gloria. Within the same 35-minute window, 23 hospital employees, including doctors and nurses, experienced sudden sickness, often followed by collapse. Many required hospitalization themselves. The one person who had to suffer the most was Julie. By the time she was transported to another hospital, her condition had worsened. Once again, white crystals were seen in her blood. A hazardous materials team covered in protective suits went through the hospital, trying to figure out what was happening. They had first thought that maybe it was a chemical leak, and they were trying to figure out, was it that was making everyone sick? But they couldn't find any such leak. Days later, a thorough autopsy was conducted on Gloria within a controlled environment. The reason they waited so long to do this autopsy was because they weren't sure what caused Gloria to die or what caused all this sickness. So they were afraid that if there was a virus within Gloria, then it could be safe to open her up only several days later, not immediately after the incident. The team who opened up Gloria were in a hazmat suit, completely protected. Surprisingly, no toxins were found in her blood. The only thing that they could find in her system were Tylenol, that is used to relieve pain, lidocaine, again to treat pain, codeine, once again pain, and finally Tigen. Tigen is an anti-nausea medication. In fact, it was finally stated that Gloria died of natural causes and that the cancer that she was trying to fight had finally gotten to her heart and kidneys, leading to her death. Meanwhile, though most of the staff members who had fallen ill eventually recovered, Julie's condition remained unstable. Her health weakened, with breathing difficulties, pancreatitis, and bone decay, confining her to a wheelchair. Gloria's family pointed fingers at Riverside Hospital, claiming that the toxic fumes within Trauma Room 1 and the hospital itself had both led to Gloria's death and the staff's ill health. It was said that the hospital had experienced hazardous material-related issues before, that is with sewer gas and toxic fumes from the equipment, and this had indeed affected the hospital before, but the hospital were not ready to admit that this was what caused Gloria's death. although her family was sure that this was the reason Gloria died. Despite extensive investigations, Riverside Hospital's search for toxic lead led to a dead end. Gloria's house was also searched for any toxic products, but nothing was found. The Department of Human and Health Services stepped in, saying that this was maybe a case of mass hysteria. Now, mass hysteria, if you don't know, is when a bunch of people in a group feel sick or have problems such as headaches or dizziness, and this is not because they are actually sick. This is because they are all worried or scared that whatever is happening to the others might be happening to them. So even though they are not really sick, they start to feel as if they are sick. This explanation did not sit well with Gloria's family or Julie, whose health was worsening with time. Suspicion of a hospital cover-up grew, leading both parties to consider legal action. A total of 3 autopsies would be conducted on Gloria. One that took place 6 days after her death, then 6 weeks, and the last one right before her burial. The hospital asked other people to take a look at the data, and eventually they reached out to Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. This was where Gloria's second autopsy was conducted. They ran tests for everything, and that's when they found that along with her pain medication, they found traces of another pain relief medication. That was a chemical called dimethylsulfone. Although now known as DMSO2, this is a naturally occurring chemical that could be found in trace amounts throughout the body. If you eat a lot of plants or eggs or something that contains sulfur, then you are definitely going to have a small trace amount of this in your body. When it is found in such low quantity, it does not affect much. Once a person dies, if that person is tested after 3 days like Gloria, the chemical would have naturally decomposed. What was surprising about Gloria was that even though an autopsy was conducted 6 weeks after her death, she still had the chemical in her system. Remember, it should have gone within 3 days, but now she would have had dozens or even 100 times the normal amount in her system. So Pat Grant, a scientist who was researching this case, decided to do some more digging. And he discovered a link to something known as dimethyl sulfoxide or DMSO. Now, dimethyl sulfoxide and dimethyl sulfone are very similar, so similar that they are just one oxygen atom apart. Gloria was in fact using DMSO, which would be proved later on. The reason for Gloria's use of this substance on her skin goes back to when DMSO was an all-rage as a cure-all. Researchers in the early 1960s led doctors to believe that DMSO could relieve pain and reduce anxiety. Athletes would even rub this DMSO cream on their skin to try to relieve some of the pain in their muscles. Then a study in mice showed that DMSO could ruin your eyesight, and then DMSO was stopped. DMSO gained an underground following as a cure-all. People still used it, just that it was now found in hardware stores. The DMSO now found in hardware stores as degreasers was 99% pure, as opposed to the less concentrated form that was once sold in medical stores. When Gloria found out about her cancer, she had done an extensive research on alternative medications to relieve some of her pain. And among several controversial home remedies, she found DMSO. Although DMSO was banned, Gloria still used it. After this research, it was all clear. This is why Gloria's skin had appeared so greasy, and this is why her breath smelled garlicky. She was applying this degreaser all over her body, and it was being soaked in through her skin. The DMSO had been absorbed into her bloodstream. However, the family of Gloria Ramirez denied that she ever used DMSO. People believed that it was Gloria who was emitting these toxic fumes. That is why only the people in Trauma Room 1 were the first ones to be affected, because they were the closest to Gloria. this was not enough of an explanation. Now, on the night that Gloria was brought into the hospital, that is well before the 911 call was placed, she was also dealing with another problem. One that her boyfriend knew she had, but didn't think that it was a big deal to tell the doctors. To be honest, in a normal scenario, this wouldn't be a big deal to tell someone. Gloria was having an UTI infection, urinary tract infection. It's very common and can be easily treated. But in Gloria's condition, it was not. In fact, this UTI was preventing all these toxic DMSO chemicals that have now entered her body from being released. Ordinarily, DMSO, as I said, in small quantities is not that harmful. But here, Gloria was not only using them in large quantities, she was also not being able to expel them because of her UTI. The critical turning point occurred when EMTs applied an oxygen mask to Gloria during her ambulance journey to the hospital. This introduced a new element, oxygen, into her system. The scientists believed that oxygen reacted with the trapped DMSO chemicals within her body, resulting in the formation of a new chemical compound, DMSO2. Grant did an experiment. He took a blood sample, mixed it with DMSO2, and sure enough, small crystals began to form in the serum, the same crystals that were seen that night in the emergency room. Had Gloria responded better to the treatments upon reaching the hospital, the following disasters wouldn't have happened. For this tragedy to occur, two specific factors needed to happen, and in this exact order. First was the application of shock on Gloria's chest, which interacted with the new chemical within her, causing a transformation. This alteration in the chemical composition, triggered by electric shocks, turned the compound into something extremely dangerous, dimethyl sulfate, a chemical weapon famously used during World War I. Once Gloria received the shocks to her chest, her body effectively became a container of nerve gas. The next event was when the nurse drew the blood. Remember the syringe with the white crystals? Emergency rooms are usually kept quite chilly, around 66 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the deadly chemical created within Gloria was still warm in her body. Dimethyl sulfate, the chemical formed, was unstable and less dangerous at higher temperatures. But when the nurse collected Gloria's blood, the deadly chemical was now transferred into a cooler room, causing it to stabilize and produce those white crystals that Julie saw. As it further stabilized, it turned into a gas and began filling the room, finally catching on to the stuff. The scientists concluded that while the mass poisoning event affected the hospital staff, it wasn't really the reason why Gloria died. Gloria indeed died of natural causes. That was her cancer, but unfortunately, others were affected around her. Despite settling with Gloria's family for $800,000, the hospital didn't admit to any wrongdoing. A few strange things happened, which I want to share with you, because there is no explanation, or these are some of the things that have not been solved. For example, the syringe that was supposed to have this DMSO crystals disappeared, and no one could find out where it was. This made many people to think that something fishy was going on, and the coroner who conducted the autopsy took his own life about a month after Gloria died. This made other people think that maybe he was being silenced. Another odd thing is that Gloria had a total of 3 autopsies. In the third one, her heart was missing, some of her organs had fecal matter on them, and this made people think that maybe there was a cover-up. There was a theory going around on News Times LA that some people may thought that maybe the hospital was doing something. It's just a speculation I found online, so I don't have any proof to back it up, so I'm not sure. I think that maybe the syringe was probably accidentally thrown away, because as we know about the white crystals, we came to know a lot later. So maybe the hospital threw it away thinking that it was tainted. Or maybe while everyone was trying to run out of the hospital, someone may have pushed it somewhere, and that's why the syringe was never found. On April 20th, 1994, which was 10 weeks after she died, Gloria was laid to rest at Olivewood Memorial Park in Riverside. Julie's lawsuit against the hospital was dismissed. Her bones never fully recovered from the damage, despite undergoing 8 surgeries. Julie resumed her role as a doctor at a different hospital. She has shared that the traumatic incidents that happened at Riverside Hospital made her a more capable doctor. There are several theories to go about. We could go in several ways. But in this episode, I want to talk about Gloria. In all these crazy theories about who is doing a cover-up or whose mistake it is, we can't forget who Gloria Ramirez actually was. She was a mother, she had a loving and caring boyfriend. She had just found out 6 weeks before admitting and dying that she had cancer. People take a long time to adjust to the situation that maybe they could die soon. She might have had financial issues and that's why she couldn't get a proper checkup. According to what I could find, Gloria didn't even have 1 session of chemo. We don't want to call Gloria the toxic lady, toxic woman, or anything toxic. She was a loving mother, a loving girlfriend, and she passed away, leaving behind a loving family. That's all that needs to be remembered. A big thank you to all my fellow listeners who have been listening to all my episodes. Thank you so much. Your listens, your support means a lot. If you love my podcast, if you love the stories that I put out, then please do follow me on whichever podcasting platform you are listening from, and please do leave a rating. It will really help me a lot. You can listen to me on other platforms including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other podcasting platform. If you are in India, you can always listen to my podcast on Gaana or JioSaavn. If you love to listen to strange and mysterious stories, then follow me on Instagram and YouTube where I put out reels on such stories. These are completely different from the ones that I put out on my podcast, so do follow me on them. If you love travel, you can follow me on my travel channels. I'll link them also in the description. Until then, stay kind and stay safe out there.